Well, good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are today on still on the law of progress, and we started the item called Degenerate peoples. We did the first couple of questions talking about the evolution, civilization, and the civilized individuals, and now we are going to talk a little bit about nations. We are on question 788. Philip, can you do the honors, please?
Certainly. Nations are collective individualities that pass through the phases of infancy, maturity, and decline, just as individuals do. Does this truth, as proven by history, imply that the most advanced nations of this century will ultimately experience their decline and end, just like those of antiquity? Nations that only live a material life and whose greatness is based on force and territorial expansion are born, grow, and die, because the strength of a nation eventually becomes exhausted like that of an individual. Nations whose selfish laws are opposed to the progress of enlightenment and charity die because it kills darkness, and charity kills selfishness. That being said, nations and individuals also have a spiritual life, and those whose laws are in harmony with God's eternal laws will continue to live and serve as a beacon for other nations.
So, we know that spirits are always progressing. That's the law of progress. But also worlds are evolving, and inside the worlds, nations also evolve. And we just have to study a little bit of history to understand that we had nations that disappeared. We had dominant nations in the past that are no longer dominant nations. Things change, and the Spirit tells us here that they have their own, so to say, material life, and according to how they evolve and how they treat their citizens, they are going also to evolve or to disappear. If we look at history, we see Egypt, the largest, the most advanced nation of 6,000 years ago or 8,000 years ago, that dominated the world for some thousands of years. And then, you know, the spirits that were there eventually returned to Capella. There are new spirits coming, replacing, but they were not the same spirits that were there in the origin. And the nation eventually progress diminished. Other nations overtook. The Roman Empire invaded, dominated, and so on and so forth. We have all this. If you study history, we see at the time of Kardec, for instance, the world was completely different in terms of nations than it is today. Even Europe was not exactly what it is today. Most of the countries were, but not what it is today. The US in 1850 didn't have all the states that it has today, was smaller than it is today. The US, of course, is the most advanced technologically nation in the world, right, in terms of technology, power, but it's not the most advanced in terms of equality and the laws that protect its citizens. You have, you know, you can see, I mentioned this quickly last week, and I'm, you know, I said I was going to talk a little bit about Sweden, right? Because Sweden, I think it's a great example of how things can change very fast if the rulers of the nations focused on the well-being of the population as a whole and not their own well-being first. Sweden at the time in the 19th century was an agricultural country that went through a very serious harvest problem. 1/3 of the population of Sweden had to leave the country. There is I remember watching a movie about Sweden.
The Conqueror?
Yes, Pell the Conqueror, like 20 years ago, that shows very well what how was difficult the situation in Sweden, right?
1982.
Yeah.
35 years ago. I mean, it was made like
In the beginning of the 20th century, the government changed. They changed a lot of rules, regulations. They, of course, invested in education because you change the world by investing in education. We know that. And they were able in 100 years to turn Sweden in one of the most social just countries in the world, together with Finland, Norway, Denmark, yeah, plus New Zealand. They are the most advanced countries in terms of equality. Again, they're not perfect. We don't live in a perfect world. There is injustice, yes. Yes, you're going to find injustice everywhere, but you cannot compare, right? A world of regeneration is when goodness prevails over evil. And in these countries, they are countries that we could say it's a world of regeneration because goodness prevails over evil. The difference between the highest salary and the lowest salary in these countries, I was looking for it, I couldn't find, but in the United States is like 200, 300, 400 times. In those countries, it's like 20 times. The GDP per capita is one of the highest in the world, together with Switzerland also. So you see how nations can evolve and can change depending on, again, the ones responsible, the population as a whole, because it's not enough for the rulers to come with laws. If the population don't embrace the laws, it doesn't change, right? It becomes.
So you think that there has to have this like collective like vibration, like in the same like level?
The collective willness, of the population with the government, of the majority. Again, you are not going to have everybody, but again, the spirits that are reincarnating, because in the end, in 100 years, you have 3 generations, let's say. The spirits that are coming receive the education. They are morally more evolved because they are adequate for the country. Of course, there will always be spirits having the opportunity to go to that place and learn. Like you have evolved spirits going to less evolved countries also to help those countries. But the thing here is, I think it's a good example of how it is possible to change. It happens, and it's just a matter of a group of spirits willing to do it, right? The other way around, we have our unfortunate neighbor in Brazil, Argentina, that was a developed country in the beginning of the 20th century, and now it's an undeveloped country because of, unfortunate decisions and politics.
And how about countries that seem like always like plagued with things like Haiti and then it's like, of course, this is just like, but they say that for the independence, they made like a collective pact with devil. So that's why Haiti is so plagued with so many like disasters, and of course that is like
there is no such thing as they have, because when our tendency as human beings, imperfect beings, is to blame others for things that we should have solved, right? So the populations, unfortunately, there are populations that will come with the opportunity of making the changes, but they don't. We have our free will, we make our own choices, and a lot of these countries, unfortunately, changes never came because the spirits that
It seems like over the years, the decades, the centuries, are going through the same cycle. Like it never ends. Like it's this.
Well,
like
you
just used to be.
You are taking a picture. You are taking a picture of a country that nowadays that is really a country that is in complete disarray. But you know, 200 years.
Like
No, yeah, 200 years ago when it became independent, with slaves, right? Was slaves that free themselves, declare independence, and expel the slave owners from the country and decided to rule the country. Those spirits, unfortunately, were not ready to rule a country. They made a lot of mistakes, like spirits everywhere else. A lot of in most countries in the world, right? And it's just that some countries are worse than others. But you know, the law is of progress, and what happens is that the whole is going to bring those less advanced up eventually. We cannot look at a picture of 20 years and think that that's going to continue to go downhill, because it's not. It's changing and will continue to change. You know, I was looking at an index today of the democratic index, meaning the whole set of liberties, right? There are above 0.9%, up 0.9% on a scale of 0 to 1. There are only 2 countries in the world. And for me, one was a huge surprise. One is Sweden. And the other one, Costa Rica, which is right next to Haiti, right?
This is Central America, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, the United States is 0.82. It's not, you know, there's a lot of problems here. And then, you know, you go from countries that are 0 to, you know, but the whole of Europe, Denmark, Finland, they are above 0.9.
Yeah.
They are 89, 88, 89. New Zealand is also 89. This takes into account all sorts of democratic liberties, right? So you ask why New Zealand wouldn't be there. There are problems in New Zealand with the indigenous people there, right? The Maoris. Mm-hmm. They feel discriminated still, and there is discrimination there, right? So, but again, New Zealand was a country that was populated by thieves. Thieves from the UK was sent to Australia and New Zealand, and those 2 countries are developed countries nowadays. So, you know, it's the spirits that are placed there with the willingness to make the change, and the majority of the population also willing to accept the change, that's going to make the difference. But again, we all have free will. So you can put the same group of spirits in 2 countries, but the majority in one country.
Like we had in Korea, like the same country to just like split into 2, and they went like in 2 different, like completely like path. Like the South is so well developed.
South Korea is an example of a country that in 50 years became a developed country and one of the most progressive countries in the world. Yes.
And with the other one, the North, it was the opposite. It's quite the opposite.
Yeah. Well, it's what they say here, right?
Same people, same culture.
Selfish laws that are opposed to the progress of enlightenment and charity die because light kills darkness. They all are going to disappear one day. Like I almost say, we all going to go back to the spiritual world, right?
And it's interesting because today I was watching someone who's in India, study yoga. And they were talking about, even though it's a super populated country, with all the castes difference, you don't see people roaming the streets, and you can walk with no problem.
Just
So
talking about
it's-
India, yeah, how India, with all the populations and the different castes,
I think
It's not just wealth.
yeah.
Like
No, it's a spiritual
evolution.
evolution, yes. Oh, yeah, no, wealth.
Yeah.
Wealth solves part of the problem, but not all. If the population is not morally willing to morally
But I
adjust,
think India is so huge, like China, you have like folks, like sectors that's completely different, because I heard like some parts start violent, it's even more violent than Brazil. Like
Yeah.
with rape, sexual like crimes and this kind of thing.
In
Remember
India.
that in India, yeah.
yeah, it's a 1.4 billion people country,
Yeah.
so I'm sure
But
there is.
compared to Brazil, like the
Yeah, it's
person was saying today,
difficult.
there is 30 going on.
And depends on where you go, and depends, yeah. Anyways, questions, comments here?
I got lost in like one bit of one of them. So many discussion here, but it's interesting that the spirit says that those countries who basically go against the natural laws, that tends to disappear. And when disappear, you know that no, they will be transformed into something better. But the question now is, what about those that follow more or less those divine laws? What about the ones that now you, as you mentioned, at least a borderline, if not already, live in a stage of world of regeneration? They will continue to be there. It doesn't say over here. It says those will disappear.
It says that those that whose laws are in harmony with God's eternal laws will continue to live and serve as a beacon for other nations, right? So the importance is our laws are in harmony with God's eternal law. The example you gave of Sweden on the car, the driving with the lights on the cars, right?
Yeah.
It's, when it becomes a habit, you don't need a law for that, is when you are getting closer to the divine laws, right? Okay. Next one, we'll continue to talk a little bit about this. It's a long one, Philip.
789.
Yeah.
Will progress ultimately unite all people of the earth in a single nation? No, not into a single nation. That would be impossible because climate differences yield distinct habits and needs that make up nationalities, each of which always need laws tailored to its special habits and needs. Charity has no geographical boundaries and makes no distinction between skin colors. When God's law is the basis of human-made law everywhere, and the law of charity is practiced among nations and among individuals, everyone will live in peace and happiness because no one will attempt to do wrong to a neighbor or live at the expense of others. The human race advances through the progress of individuals who gradually become enlightened. When they constitute a majority, they take the lead and draw the rest forward. Persons of genius sporadically emerge and give momentum to advancement, and persons of authority, God's instruments, carry out in the course of a few years what the race left to its own devices would have taken several centuries to accomplish. The progress of nations further highlights the justice of reincarnation. Through the efforts of moral individuals, a nation advances intellectually and morally, and is ultimately happier in this world and in the next. However, during its slow journey over the course of successive centuries, thousands of individuals die every day. What is the fate of those who have fallen along the way? Does their relative inferiority deprive them of the happiness reserved for future generations? Is their happiness relative? Divine justice cannot permit such an injustice. Through experiencing many lives, the right to happiness is within the reach of all. The legacy of progress does not exclude anyone. Those who have lived during barbaric times can come back in a period of civilization in the same nation or another and can profit by the advancement of the various nations
Of the earth, sorry.
Yeah, that disappeared on me. However, the concept of one life presents another difficulty. According to that theory, the soul is created at birth. For some individuals to be more advanced than others, God would have to create souls for them that are more advanced than the rest of the creation. What would be the source of this favoritism? How can one person who has lived no longer than another, often not even as long, merit a superior soul? That is not the only problem. A nation, over the course of 1,000 years, transitions from barbarism to civilization. If all human beings lived 1,000 years, we could understand that they would have the time to progress. However, many die every day at all ages, and people are continuously being reborn on Earth. At the end of 1,000 years, no trace remains of those who were living in a country 1,000 years before. The nation has become civilized, but who has progressed? Are they the people who were once barbarians? But they died a long time ago. Are they the newcomers? If the soul is created at birth, these souls did not exist during the period of barbarism, and we would be required to assert that the efforts made to civilize a nation do not have the power to improve imperfect souls, but to make God create more perfect souls. We will now compare this theory of progress with that given by the spirits. The souls that come to a civilized nation have had their infancy like all others, but they have already lived and are advanced due to prior progress. They are attracted by the circumstances best suited to them and their present condition. The efforts to civilize a nation are not aimed at creating better quality souls in the future, but rather at attracting souls that have already progressed, regardless of where they have previously lived. The progress each nation accomplishes provides the key to the progress of humankind as a whole. It shows that when every nation on Earth has reached the same level of moral advancement, our planet will be a haven of good spirits who will live in a fraternal union. All the bad spirits will be repelled and forced to seek surroundings that suit them in inferior worlds until they are worthy of coming back into our transformed world. The commonly accepted theory of the one life, devoid of the concept of reincarnation, leads to another consequence, specifically that the work of social betterment is only beneficial to present and future generations. This result is null and void for past generations who made the mistake of entering the world too soon and who have to make do, hampered by the faults of their barbaric past. According to Spiritism, the progress accomplished by later generations is also beneficial to the generations that preceded them, who can improve for the goal of civilization when they reincarnate at a point in the future.
Thanks, Philip. It's a long comment by Kardec, very long. Kardec went into reincarnation here, talking about nations, which I thought it was interesting. But again, he never comments something by if he doesn't have a reason, right? So the first concept here that the Spirit tells us that we are not going to be a single nation throughout the world, because depending on where we are, we have distinct habits and distinct needs that make up nationalities. We can see a world where we all live in peace as brothers and sisters, because we have places like this on Earth, so we can expand this to the whole planet in the future, one day in the future, depending on us, and see that the difference between nations will be much smaller, right? The experience that Europe is doing, of course, is in the beginning of the uniting the nations under one currency, under many of common laws, but with their own particular differences, has benefited Europe as a whole in terms of giving them peace, giving them economic progress, but their differences still exist, right? They speak different languages, they have different customs. It is an experiment that we can see going forward. The whole world will benefit from it. We have treaties, economic treaties throughout the world. But of course, we are a long way from it. We will continue to evolve as independent nations, trying to work together and trying to progress. And we just have to look outside the world, to look at the world, to see that how far we are from anything even remotely close to a unified country, let's say. But when God's law becomes the basis of human law everywhere, and charities practice among nations, everyone will live in peace and happiness. And that doesn't, then the fact that they are nations or non-nations doesn't really matter, right? Because you move from one place to the other according to your needs, to everyone's needs. And then on the comment by Kardec, he brings the concept of reincarnation, right? When he talks about the progress of the nations and the progress of individuals. Our progress is individual. Each one have their own moral and intellectual progress. No one can progress for us. We need to do our job by ourselves, but we live in society, so collectively we evolve as a society. If we don't bring reincarnation to this table, what Kardec is telling us here, it's very difficult to explain the progress of nations, right? Why some people would have lived only once in the barbarian times, the others in a little more advanced, and now those benefiting from all technological advances that we have and comforts. And those that lived at the time of Kardec didn't have that, right? Anesthesia appeared at the time of Kardec. I was reading the other day that in Civil War, contrary to what most people believe, anesthesia was widely used already to treat, during the Civil War. Anesthesia started in 1850 or something around that time. So they already had the use of anesthesia. But of course, it was not widespread available, so sometimes it couldn't be used. We cannot imagine living in a world nowadays without anesthesia, right? Elmo that works in a hospital knows that. right? But yeah, we lived in a world without anesthesia for thousands and thousands of years, right? For 200 years we have it. Is this a moral or intellectual evolvement? It's a combination of both, because the intellectual abilities bring the knowledge to the development of the anesthesia, but the moral improvement of humankind allow them to benefit from that. And when our next item, which is civilization, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. So what Kardec is basically bringing in this long text is comparing the evolution of the nations and the concept of reincarnation into this evolution, and how with reincarnation it makes sense and makes it easy for us to understand. Without reincarnation, it's very difficult to understand. There is no justice, right? So any questions, comments here? Paco, you're on mute. I know you're trying to talk.
I have a question. Now, I understand that we progress as individual souls, but it seems to me that by reading this, that also the planet Earth as a dimension also evolves. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Okay, now, so that means the planet Earth is going to exist into eternity.
No.
No?
Science tells us that planet Earth will last for another 5 billion years, right? Or 3 billion years.
Oh, so it's not gonna be like us then.
No.
Okay. Okay. So, but it's going to be a better dimension.
Yeah, it's going to get better and better and better. Eventually, if continues the progress, will be a happy world where where happy spirits live, not perfect spirits, because perfect spirits no longer reincarnate, but happy spirits will live. But eventually, the planet, the solar system is going to disappear. It's not that the Earth is going to disappear. The sun is going to get extinct, and with the sun being extinct, all planets around it will.
Oh, okay. So even though even though the planet Earth itself is going to progress, that does not mean that it's going to live into eternity. Eventually, it will be destroyed.
Yes, correct.
Okay, okay. But the souls know. And also, regarding the question, the way they pose that question, or Kardec posed that question, if you would allow me to be critical of that, it says just like individuals. But he forgot to say just like individuals and physicality, because individuals we always progress. So we don't decline. We will always be advancing. So like when he made the comparison of nations, like individuals, that they grow, they go through infancy, they decline. Well, that doesn't really apply to human beings. Only apply to human beings in physicality, but not as souls. Am I correct? Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I just.
But even the physical body continues to evolve. Our physical body continues to evolve. The physical body we have today is different from the physical body we had 3,000, 5,000 years ago.
Yeah, but it's going to decline. And it's going to die.
The physical body will continue to evolve.
In subsequent reincarnations?
Yes, we are going to have better physical bodies as we reincarnate.
Oh, okay. So okay, let me call it, you call it physical bodies. So let me just call it physical configurations. Okay. 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 I got it. Okay. I see what you're talking about now. Physical configuration. It makes more sense to me to say physical configuration than physical body, because physical body, I look at myself as the body.
No, whether you're talking about physical body in one incarnation, physical body in one incarnation, of course, is going to
the human body, the human body,
it's going to stop functioning, and it's going to go back to nature. But human body in terms of our eternal evolution, our future reincarnations.
As a configuration itself, yes.
Yeah,
it's going to evolve.
it improves, right?
Yes. I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
It's like I'm still limited in terms of when you say limited physical body. I'm very limited in my perspective of looking at it as a human physical body, and that's not it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Paco. Danny. Unmute. You're mute, Dan.
The response from Kardec made me think about the massive flow of immigration that's happening right now. It's been happening for a while, but it seems that more and more, like large groups everywhere, keep moving to let's say, looking for a better life, right? Depending on the weather, climate, war, economical. So always looking for something better. So is this something that we can also connect with, not with reincarnation exactly, but like people, for example, who moved on somehow and they don't fit anymore in that country or in that nation, and they are looking for a place in which fits their moral evolvement that might be a little better than the group they were born into, or it's just basically earthly dwellings, like let's say climate, hunger, war, and we have physically to survive, find a place to survive.
Little bit of everything, right? It's survival. It is it's a karmic process also, right? Because a lot of these immigrants going to nations that have to receive these spirits because they were the ones that mistreated these spirits in previous incarnations through persecutions, through other things. I'm talking general, right? So, but also according to our needs. We as humanity, we have to integrate ourselves. We have to be united in terms of a society for all of us to evolve. Of course, the immigration, the way it happens today, there is a lot of problems. There is illegal immigration. That is, we need to deal with that in several countries. There are all those that are escaping wars. There are those that are escaping oppressions, nations that are oppressing them. So when you come to, let's say, to be reincarnated in a country that North Korea that we mentioned before, right? It may not be in your reincarnation plan to flee the country that you were born to, but the conditions made by those spirits living there, the rulers, force you to make a decision to change your path. Again, we have free will, we make our choices. So what I'm saying is, it's not written in stone that you have to immigrate. You may decide during your life to immigrate and change your reincarnation plan, or you can, the spirits say that a lot of us Brazilians that are just spiritists from France reincarnated in Brazil and now have the mission to spread spiritism throughout the world, right? So some of us came with this plan that we may have followed or not, right? So there are several reasons that make this immigration process happens. But if you think that in the Middle Ages, an average person would never travel more than 50 miles away from where they were born their whole life, you see how much we changed, right? We hear the stories of the adventurers that the Marco Polos and the ones that travel to discover America, but these are the exception. The vast majority lived in their villages and never left their village during their whole life. Nowadays, more and more people are traveling throughout the world for tourism or to immigration, through all other things. And this brings us all together, if you look at the top of the pyramid, at the future, right? Because it brings different customs to more people. You know, we have Italian food and Chinese food throughout the world, right? The most popular types of foods that you have is Italian and Chinese, right? You didn't have that. These are an evolution of us as a society, the availability of more access to different things, right? Again, I'm not saying it's perfect, and it's far from perfect. We have many problems, but it is a sign of us as society evolving. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so civilization.
790. Is civilization the progress of humankind, or according to some philosophers, its decadence? It is incomplete progress. Humankind does not suddenly morph from infancy to maturity. It is rational to condemn is it rational to condemn civilization? You should condemn those who abuse it rather than God's work.
Yeah, you know, it's something that was discussed at the time of Kardec, and until today, there are people that discuss, right, if civilization brings us more benefits or more harm. The law is of progress. We just mentioned anesthesia, right? How can you say it's not progress? And it is the product of civilization. Civilization is a necessity. It's a natural law. It's the law of evolution. Now, the deviations that happen because of civilization is what we have to address. Like the Spirit says, you should not condemn those who abused it rather than God's work, right? I was reading an answer by Emmanuel about civilization today, and he was giving the example of cars, right? Cars.
For cars.
Yes. Cars are a sign of evolution, right? Are they perfect? No. Do they cause a lot of deaths? Yes. Should we just eliminate all cars? It's progress, right? The problem is we need to address the problems that having so many cars in the world, pollution that we are addressing more and more with electric cars and other options, right? Or more cleaning fuels. Accidents, which are just a result of our lack of respecting the laws, because we have laws. If everyone followed the traffic laws, there'll be no accidents. Because that would include taking good care of your cars. The accidents because the car failed is for our lack of attention to the cars, right? So Emmanuel was giving the example of the cars, that they shorten distances, they help us civilization a lot, but they cause problems. We need to address the problems. We cannot condemn the cars. We need to address the issues that result from this, right? So what the spirits are telling us here is progress is inevitable, right? We have to deal with it, like it or not, because progress will come even if we resist, and those that resist progress will be left in the dust of history, like we discussed last week. So civilization is part of our progress. We started as a society, we started civilization when we stopped being nomads and started being sedentary population, right? When we form a group and decided to stay in one place, that's when we started civilization, because before that we were just running around trying to survive. If we didn't have civilization, we would still be there as the primitives, right? Trying to hunt and survive. So, and that's absurd to think, right? For those that talk about going back to nature, it's not a solution going back to nature. To use nature more, to take care of nature and to use nature in our favor as a good resource is the way to do it, not to abandon everything and go back to nature, because with that, we're just, we were just trying to avoid progress, which we cannot. Okay. Questions, comments? Right, next.
791. Will civilization be purified eventually so that the evils caused by it will disappear? Yes. When humankind's moral nature is as fully developed as its intelligence, the fruit cannot appear before the flower blooms.
So it's interesting that the spirits are telling us here that our intelligence is more developed than our moral nature, right? And we can see that because we are more and more being able to do more helpful tools to live, for us to live better materially, but morally we are still struggling, right? We are still not where we should be, but we are continue to evolve. Civilization will be purified eventually. When we become perfect spirits or happier spirits or more elevated spirits, we are going to have a more purified civilization. When all the human laws are no longer necessary, we will know that we have achieved that degree of purification needed. But we can imagine that we are very far from it, right?
So the human laws is a way to let us to progress.
It's human laws exist for us to progress. They are a necessary tool, because without human laws, we go very quickly into chaos, right? You can see when some things happen that the hurricane, for instance, or the earthquake that just happened in Turkey, a disaster that happened in Turkey and Syria, how quickly it became a chaos, because people are just struggling to survive and do not respect human laws. So, it's the easiest is for us to think about the traffic laws, right? Without it, we couldn't drive. We need the traffic lights, we need the one-way street, we need places for people to cross the street, because without that, I don't know if I've been to countries where the traffic laws are not very efficient or not very followed. And, I've been to Egypt, for instance, that I mentioned. It's a chaos, right? People crossing everywhere, no lanes, animals in the middle of the road. It's chaos, right? So again, are the traffic laws here in New York City perfect? No, far from it. And we are having problems with, the bicycles.
Well, the laws are good. The problem is the population is not following.
Yeah, well, yeah. But the laws are not perfect. Still
Well,
can,
they're not perfect.
yeah, still can be improved. But yes, exactly. The problem is when you don't follow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the problem with the laws everywhere. The country that follows, population that more follows the law is more civilized than the rest. Those that don't follow, because a sign of civilization is following the laws. You don't agree with the laws, you democratically work to change the laws. That's how it should work, right? but not respecting the laws just because you don't like it, it's just a recipe for chaos.
Last year, I was in Vancouver in September, and I saw everybody was wearing helmets, bikes on the correct way of going, and cars respected. Okay, it was the downtown for one day and etc. I had to force myself to follow the rules because I didn't want to like to jaywalk crossing the street. I was like, oh, better go to the crosswalk.
Yeah.
Because not a single person was crossing outside. I said, all right.
Like the spirits say, when the majority follows the rules, the rest will follow. The problem is when the majority doesn't follow the rules, and that's what happens in New York. The majority in the street don't follow the rules, right? You cross, you go on the contrary, on the opposite direction. You cross, you jaywalk. You know, I'm guilty. I do all of this.
And I remember the first time I went, I came here, and then my first international trip was to Switzerland, and I was crossing the street. I didn't see anybody cross. I said, "Oh, what is this? It's just a small crossing." And I was almost on the other corner. The police came, "Oh, that's not the way you do here. You have to go underground." They made me go back. I was like maybe 2 feet from there. They made me go back, cross it, and said that the next time you get up again. So,
Yeah.
like, I went back. Yeah. That's
Yes.
again embarrassed. Went the short way.
Okay. Right. We have time one more.
792. Why does civilization not produce all the good it can produce? Because human beings are not yet ready or willing to obtain that good. Could it also be because it generates new passions in creating new wants? Yes, and because a spirit's faculties do not progress at the same rate, everything takes time. You cannot expect perfect fruit from an incomplete civilization.
Yeah, so we have an imperfect civilization, of course. We have still many shortcomings, so we cannot, we can feed the whole population in the world, but we don't know how to distribute food. We are inefficient in distributing food. So there are people suffering from hunger throughout the world, in some places, because we don't make the available food arrive at them. At the same time, we waste a lot of food in the developed countries because we, instead of using the excess food to donate to those in need, we just let it go to waste, right? Of course, the development creates new wants, yes, and new wants, because we are in perfect spirit, we become victims of our own progress, right? Because those that do not have access to this new advances, if they are not good spirits, they will fall into their imperfections and try to access by ways that are not according to the law, right? So that's why you have crime and throughout the world, different sorts of crime from top to bottom of society, right? People stealing from those that have, and people stealing from governments and things like that, right? Is a sign that we as a civilization have a long way to go still to become a society where everybody benefit from the progress of humankind. We are going to get there, but still it will take some time. Okay. Questions, comments here? Okay, the next question is a very long one again, so we're going to leave it for, we have 3 minutes, we're going to leave for next week. Okay. So this Saturday, we have a lecture by John Santos, Be Different. What is the role of Spiritists within humanity? Does Spiritism have anything to say regarding political matters? How has humanity handled its understanding of the truth so far? Dogmatic or heuristic approach? Which one leads to growth? Which one draws us closer to the truth? Tolerance and forgiveness are the much needed virtues of our times. Empathy, the main ingredient to evolve intolerance and forgiveness. So that's the lecture this Saturday, 11 a.m. by John Santos on the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube page and International Spiritist Council YouTube page also. The podcast series Psychology and Spirituality that started last week. We'll have the first study of Joanna de Angelis, because last week was an introduction, basically. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Every week we have a new episode at 6 p.m. on Saturday, on Fridays. It's pre-recorded, so you can watch later. Okay. This Sunday, it's the second Sunday of the month, so we are going to be studying the Gospel according to Spiritism. Next Wednesday, the book club will discuss chapter 6 of the book Hail Christ. Okay. And Zoraida, can you do our prayer? Closing
Yes.
prayer?
Yes. As we come to the end of our meeting tonight here, we give thanks to the spiritual benefactors, our guardian angels, all that have come here, introducing us to the understanding of what we need to know in order to better ourselves in this planet Earth, to help each other, to guide each other, and to understand the most important, to love each other and work hard in our development of growth, spiritual growth, moral growth. We ask as we leave here today, dear Father, that our prayers could surround those that are going through so much suffering, the wars, the earthquake. May our prayers surround them with strength and courage and faith, that we will continue to pray and ask our Father to guide them and assist them in what they are going through now. We ask as we continue throughout the week to meet ourselves again in our study groups, to continue prayers and at our homes, to help each other as much as we can in this progress of enlightenment and goodness, dear Lord. We pray, dear Father, for all that have given us so much here, the teachers, the Spiritist Group of New York, for the United States Spiritist Federation, for the United States Spiritist Councils, that continue to inform us, to guide us and help us in the struggle of our lives. We give them thanks and ask as we leave here today to continue understanding and helping as much as we can for the world out here that are going through so much, dear Lord. We thank you and we ask as we leave here today to return again next week and continue our studies in helping all in this planet Earth. We thank you, dear Lord. And with this in mind, we ask permission to close our meeting today. So be it.